Alright, here we go. Well, hello! Welcome to Drawing with Fire. I'm Valarie, your neighborhood pyrography artist. Joined with hubby.
Cupcake.
And fur babies.
Woof woof.
And today we are going to work on darkening some more. But I think we'll focus on the right side, since this is our darkest area, especially in here. I am going to use the 18 extra small because I can use that at a lower heat setting but still get a darker burn. So I'm going to start heating that up at 3.
And that's Wanda and Andrea.
Yep. Hey Andrea, hey Wanda. So this is my Optima. It's the only brand I use. Been using it for a long time now. All my other ones are put away. Let's get in here. Alrighty. See how much of the glare I can knock off. Because I know you guys are getting a glare. Let me see if I can.
Looks like river.
It looks like what?
Looks like river.
I'm trying to get this glare right here away from the camera. There we go. That'll work. Now I gotta move my light so I don't bump it. So, heating up the 18 extra small. Remember, I am gonna bump this up to 3.5. And working. This is on birch. Requires a little bit more heat than the basswood. This is a Trekell board. Now what I need to do is I have the dark bands that run across the rocks on this way. I need to make sure that my focal point is up and down. And remember, this is going to look lighter because of how the light is bouncing into the camera. It is darker in person. And let's see here. Let's get going. Grab my reference. I also have my phone photo. I'll zoom that in so I can glance to the right to see that. So we have a dark band.
Dave's Creations is here.
Hi, Dave. Let's see here. Looking. My rocks are not exact, but that is okay. We're just going to start putting in some darks. And right now I'm going to go, I need to angle the line slightly towards the back because again, this is where the main viewpoint is. That's where your eyes are going to go first. So that's the angle I need to hit. And I am at 3.5. And it's going to burn darker than the 3.5 small just because of how the pen is made. And we're going to discuss going darker because that can be very overwhelming, especially if you've spent a lot of time working on a piece and you're a little concerned that you're going to mess up. So we're going to discuss trying to get past that. So I'm just going to do, again, I could angle a little bit this way, and I'm using the top half of the tip. Don't forget to clean your tips, wipe them off.
Sheila's here.
Hey Sheila. I'm not going to go like, I need some cutout in the rocks, so I'm not going to go fully across because I can create shapes within the rocks so we can get some curves and what have you just by doing a bit of negative burning. So we've put in a darker band there. It is darker in person. Let's pick another place because really the strata I don't think.
Burl's here.
Hey, Burl. Is gonna matter to a regular viewer who's just walking by and looks over at it. it will just feel like the Grand Canyon. Somebody who's an expert in it, especially in the confluence area, might pick little things out, but that's okay. And remember, when I darken on the edges, that curves the angle. So we have a hill, a valley, a hill, a valley, and that's how we get a more three-dimensional rock, which can be hard when working from just a photo. But we've got to get this darker, because right now things kind of blend in on itself. And so if you're doing a burning, regardless of what the subject matter is, if you feel certain things aren't standing out, the main reason those certain things are not standing out is because they don't have variation in the lights and the darks. They're all very similar in tone.
They lack contrast.
They lack contrast. So if you're looking at a piece you've been working on and you're like, I did this and I did that, and it's still not looking right, take a photo of your piece and just, in your phone, in the regular, edit area of your pictures, just start darkening things up. And that way you'll feel more comfortable darkening up the photo to see what is looking better because you've darkened it up. And then use it as a reference when you go to darken, and you'll feel a lot more comfortable bumping up that heat, and you'll start seeing the difference.
Mm-hmm.
And that way you'll feel more confident in yourself, because it is hard to up the temperature when you've been spending so long on a piece and you're a little worried that you're going to overdo it. But you need to overdo it.
I have to say, like, because I am a painter, and so I work in colors a lot, and I think that one great thing about pyrography is that it forces you to work monochromatically, and in that case, contrast is even more important. And as a painter, I think one of the things that people get confused with is that color is not contrast. A lot of painters, or people who use different colors, sometimes they will use all kinds of different colors on their work, and then they will be like, why isn't my work standing out? And the thing is that color does not equal contrast. And if you were to take that painting or color work to your phone or to a graphics program, and you were to turn it into a monochromatic, use a monochromatic filter on it, you might find that those colors blend together because they lack contrast. And when you're doing pyrography, you have to pay attention to the contrast because you don't have colors. You only have different variations of whatever the wood provides and burn, in whatever you're...
In the color of the wood.
In the color of the burn, right? So it becomes a really good exercise. So even if if you're not primarily a pyrographer, I think that pyrography is excellent to help you learn contrast. And even if you don't do pyrography, if you observe it, it is a great tool to learn contrast, because you have to take any scene that is in color, and you have to describe those elements in color, and you have to use contrast to make them stand out and stand apart. It's the same practice that you would use in ink, or you would use in graphite or charcoal, but it is a really, really, it is an important thing to learn that you can apply to many other different art forms.
Very good explanation. See how my rocks are starting to... I'm just picking out areas to go across with the band, and look how much that changed right there, just popping out those rocks. And giving some more definition to them versus less definition over here. And there's definitely some areas that still need to go darker. In fact, I think the whole face needs to go slightly darker, but for now I need to put in where these bands are. And if I get a little darker area, like right there, because I had lifted my pen and it got its heat fully back. Recovered. That's the word I was looking for. Just do it in a couple more other places. Or use it as the mental means to go darker. Because it really is harder to go darker. Especially when you thought you were already dark enough from the beginning.
Well,
and so you've moved on. That's why you won't see me finish one area completely and then move on to the next, because I know by the time I move on, that original area I started with is going to be lighter. That's why I don't add any white unless I'm marking out an area that I don't want burned on, so I don't have to worry about it. And then I use just the white charcoal. I don't use it, a gel pen or anything like that, because at some point I'm probably going to have to go darken even a small area that I had already finished in my head. It's not finished. And I see a lot of people who recently, they're adding a lot of color to, so they think they finished the face, they think they finished the eyes, so they add, green to the eyes, because that was their plan. But then they get the rest of the stuff in, and now they're stuck because they can't darken the eyes. Because you've got that color laid down. It's just...
can't go on top of it.
Can't go on top of it. And you kind of painted yourself into a corner, like literally. Mm-hmm. So you either have to adjust the rest of the piece to go around that, or see if you can get the color off, but depending on the type of color, a lot of it is already in the grain, so you're going to have to sand a whole bunch to get back to raw wood and remove that color.
Yeah. And I think that if you're like, I've seen some artists who paint over their pyrography, and I think that sort of defeats the purpose of it, because then you're obscuring the beautiful grain and the nature of the pyrography if you're just going to paint over what you've done. So
I think for some people, and of course it has to do with this, it depends on the subject, but I think those who do what you just mentioned do that because they lack confidence in themselves, and so it's easier just to stop burning and paint the stuff in.
Yeah.
And that's an artistic choice. It is what it is, and I may not prefer it, but if the artist likes what they did, then
yeah, awesome
for them. Just know that it's going to keep coming up as a artistic issue.
Well, and your piece is more likely going to be officially labeled as a multimedia piece.
Yes, it is a multimedia piece. But it is a personal choice Sometimes it looks really cool. Other times I think people add too much color, like too many different colors, and it completely takes away from the piece. It becomes too overwhelming.
I think too that I would like to add a couple of other things to that. Is that I think that one thing that we always come back to is patience.
Yeah.
Is that people are not patient enough, and that you get something and you get excited about it, and you're like, oh wow, this is looking really good, and then you want to be done with it, and you're like, oh okay, wow, I'm done, and so your brain wants to be done with it, and so you make up excuses as to why it should be done, and it's not really done if you're being really truthful with yourself, but you want it to be.
And that's where learning to critique your work, not yourself, your work.
And so, if this were a race, you...
Oh, I've lost a long time ago.
No.
Metaphorically, if it's a race, I lost a long time ago. I'm still back on the starting.
No, but at least you're still on the course. What I'm saying is that a lot of artists leave the course before they finish the race.
That's true.
A lot of people, they leave the marathon. They're out there and they're like, oh, okay, I'm done, and then they leave the course, and then you might come back later and you realize, oh, I never finished this piece, but it's too late at that point.
Yeah, you've already varnished it, or you've already added the color, or whatever. You've called it done in your brain.
Yeah.
And so...
And then the other part of that is that you might convince yourself that that you can't do what needs to be done through traditional pyrography, and that you just need to switch to another media, and you're like, oh, well, I'm just going to paint over the rest of this. In which case, now you have actually sabotaged yourself, and now you won't be able to finish it any other way. And it will be multimedia, and it may not come out as well as you'd like, because you've chosen to take an easier route. And again, that goes back to patience and wanting to be done with it, and wanting a quicker solution.
I want to be done. I want to be done with this.
But the answer, I think, is always in being patient with yourself. And if you find yourself, this is one thing I've had to learn, and trust me, Hubcap is the worst at this. I know. Mm-hmm. Yes, I know. That my method is that in the past, I have called a piece done, and then been upset when Valarie has been like, well, what about this and this, and then I've been like, artistic choices I've made, and been upset about it.
Yes.
But in my heart of hearts, I know that it wasn't done. But then not been able to do anything about it, really, because I've already, either varnished it, or, I've done something else to it, which made it not able to be, completed.
You want to know how bad he would varnish quickly, so that if I saw it after it was varnished, it would be like, well,
it's too late.
Too late.
That's just true.
So I started coming in towards the end before, and just stand there and look, and then just wait for an invite for opinion. Because I will admit, in the beginning, I was bad about offering an opinion when not asked.
Yes. And
that caused issues.
We had to learn to communicate better.
Yep.
And I had to learn to receive criticism better as well. So...
Meanwhile, I'm begging him to come in my studio going, find something wrong, because I know there's something wrong. And find it.
To be honest, though, it's hard to find a lot of things wrong in your work. But also, that fault lied in my own critique of my own work, because I was not as critical of my own work.
That's
if you're not as critical of your own work, you're not going to see mistakes in a perfectionist piece. So there's a problem there too. But
that is true.
But I guess the thing that I have learned to do, this is what I've learned to do, is if I find myself becoming impatient with a piece, the moment that I find myself becoming impatient, I will put whatever tool I'm using. I don't do pyrography, but I use other medias. I will back away from whatever I'm working on, and I will go work on something else, and I'll come back to that piece. Because what I have found is that if I work at something while I am distracted or frustrated, I will invariably make it worse. And so it is better to back away and come at the same piece again another day when I'm willing to put the time and effort that it deserves into it. And it becomes the better work as a result. And so I would say in all cases, if you find yourself being impatient, especially in pyrography, don't try and hurry it up, and don't try and say it's done.
Take a break.
Take a break, slow down, step away, but be committed to the process. And you have a question.
Please.
Wanda asks, if you use watercolor pencil, can you still not burn?
Nope, because some of the pigments within a watercolor pencil could be toxic. So just be of the mindset that once I'm adding color, the burn is done. Just get into that mindset. Even if the color is going over here, but you need to do something over here, just get into the practice of once I put my burner pen down and call it done and I'm ready to add color, the burning is done. It just makes it so much easier than trying to decide to keep going and then have to worry about if there's a toxic issue going on. This way you just don't have to worry about it. You have done your burning, you're ready to call it done, regardless of whatever the reason, you're ready to be done. Then the color is safe, and then you just have to be okay with going, oh crap, I've added this color and now I've lost this, or my main subject isn't popping out, or this color doesn't look right, because some colors do not go as well with the burn.
So, and I want to add to that too, is that when you're getting close to the end of your artwork, whatever it is, there will be times when you see that work and maybe you've received critique on it and you've corrected the critique, and we're gonna get to that too, Wanda, and Dave. We'll get to those things, but when you are truly happy with the piece, when you've looked at it at all angles and you have like high confidence and you're like, yeah, I feel like this is done. And granted, Dave, coming to you, all right, soon. But when you're like, man, I can't find anything wrong with this, then you might consider that it's time to put colors on it if you're going to do that. I would still step away from that and give it some time, though, because give it a couple days to where you're not looking at it, and then go back and look at it and see if anything stands out to you. If it still looks awesome to you at that point, then yes, I think that you could consider varnishing it or, doing whatever it is that you're going to do to it. But I would definitely go through that process first. Make sure that, because if you look at your work, this is what Hubcap does has done in the past, is that I'll look at something and then I'll have this like nagging thing in the back of my head, like, there's something that just doesn't look right. And then I'll have like this other voice in the back of my head that goes, no, does it though? Maybe I'm just being hypercritical. You know what? Maybe I'll look at a different angle. You know what? It's probably fine. You know what? It's fine. And but if you have that kind of inner monologue going on, it's probably not fine. You probably need to fix it, and whatever that entails. So. If you are having any kind of doubt whatsoever, then get a second opinion, or maybe take some time away from it, because sometimes you might not be able to see what's wrong with it until you take some time away from the piece, and then when you come back, you might be able to see it directly, because you can see it with fresh eyes. And I know I'd say, like Wanda says, understood in terms of like can't pyrography after, watercoloring.
Yeah.
I mean, devil's advocate, if you had forced air respiration and you're in an outdoor environment where nobody could get hurt, you probably could, but you still don't know how it's going to react with the watercolor pigment. So it's definitely going to be a different process. I would tell you sometimes you just don't know how things are going to react. Like something very innocuous could seem like it's not going to be toxic, and it might be lethal. I can tell you I tried to repair a pair of gloves once with super glue, and I didn't think it was going to be an issue, but whatever thread that they used in the super glue, whatever thread was used in the gloves, when it hit the super glue, it created a toxic fume, and it just about knocked me out. And there was no warning, like I wouldn't know. So you just don't know what's going to happen. So just, as a general rule, and, as a safety rule, like, make sure you're done with your pyrography before you do anything else to it. Because, probably shouldn't be doing anything to it afterwards.
And then you don't have to worry.
Exactly.
All right. So
I'm working my way down the list. Okay. Wanda says, as far as critique, she says sometimes she asks for critique, and that's all she gets is, that's beautiful, or it's amazing, and it's frustrating because she doesn't want that. Well, I guess that's where other artists come in, because your family and friends can be painfully supportive sometimes.
And they love you, and they gotta live with you.
Well, it's not just that. It's that sometimes they will not see anything wrong. They won't see what's wrong. They'll see the best of it, unless they're very critical, and that's a whole different other problem, right? Right? Then that can be toxic. But you got to find some artists somewhere who will look at your stuff critically and objectively, hopefully kindly as well, because you don't want. But I would tell you this: whenever you're asking for critique, do not point out flaws to people. They will find them on their own if they're there. Because if you point out to something, especially to a potential client or a customer, if you're like, yeah, I wasn't happy with this line, I wish it was darker or something, they'll home in on that.
And not see anything else.
And they will comment and I'm like, oh yeah, I can tell, that's definitely, because everybody wants to be an expert. And all of a sudden, that'll be all that they can talk about. So
and see.
Yeah. So don't point out your flaws, even if they're there, and even if you want to be humble, that's fine. But
I'm burning straight down because the vertical lines need to be coming down the face. It's the horizontal lines that, in fact, I need to fix this line right here. I point out the issues while I'm burning to you guys so you can learn. If I was showing this to somebody, I wouldn't point it out. I just wait and see what they said. So that's why I probably should and I know I have clarified it in the past. I point it out to you guys so you guys can learn and see how I'm trying to fix something. But anybody else, I wouldn't point it out.
Yeah. Okay, so David asked, what do you do if you were very critical about your work, about your own work? So Valarie. Because Valarie is also very critical of her own work.
And it's something that I'm continuously working on.
Yeah.
Because I am.
How would I put this? I would say it's crippling.
Sometimes.
I would say it's crippling.
Sometimes it is.
Criticism of your own work.
One, I have to definitely remind myself that I am human. I am going to make mistakes. It is not going to be perfect. Two, it is a piece of art that I'm supposed to be creating because I enjoy doing it. And there's pieces that I'm just absolutely not happy with, that I lose interest in, this one sat for 5 years. before pulling it back out again. Reminding myself that a piece will stay in the ugly stage for a long time as I'm working. And it won't be until I got a little bit left that it will start looking good. And that is normal. That's part of the process. I'm learning to be kinder to myself. And if I keep working on a piece, and it doesn't seem to be changing too much anymore, then it's done. Everything I'm doing now is just
it's like
fluff, not fluff. It's
superfluous.
Yeah, it's no longer making a difference. So I'm ultimately wasting time. And right now, as I'm talking, I'm just trying to darken up this area. Let me lift it so you guys can see, because we're seeing more definition between the two areas, which is what I want.
Anybody who's ever polished anything, brass or silver or anything like that, you know, you always have this idea of how shiny you want to get something, and then like you could keep at that like indefinitely, and it's hard to stop sometimes because and I'm saying this, I'm like, do I have problems? But I blame the army. But it's the same process. Is at some point you have to decide if it's shiny enough, because some point
it doesn't get any shinier.
All the polishing that you're doing is not making it any shinier. So you just have to pick a point and be like, okay, that's good enough.
And when that happens, I take another picture and I try to make it a good picture, because when I stop and I'm talking to you guys, I'm looking up at my screen and it's a smaller picture, and it allows my brain to read the information differently. So by taking a photo and looking at it on a smaller screen, your brain reads it differently. And if it looks good and you feel it's done, then it just has to be done.
Wanda says, oh yeah, spit shine boots and shoes.
Yep.
And she says, yeah, 5 years. It's been 5 years? It has been 5 years.
Yep,
So.
It's been 5 years since I had this piece out, and I just want to get it done.
But getting back to Dave's question, I do want to add to that that ideally, and Val has said this in the past too, is that ideally you want to make sure that every piece that you do is better. It's always going to be your best work.
Hopefully. Sometimes it doesn't happen.
Ideally. Right? But a byproduct of that is that the further along in your art career that you go, it means that your older work is going to look less and less good to you. And
that should be a positive thing.
It is, because it shows your growth, right?
Yep.
Now you are never ever going to, especially if you are a perfectionist, you are never ever going to like see your work and be like, oh my God, I've done perfect. Because if you were, I think you'd be an egomaniac, and that's a whole other bag of issues there. And there are artists like that think that they are amazing at what they do.
Their poo and their brush don't stink.
Yep, exactly. But I think that, artists who are perfectionists and who are professional, they are highly self-critical of themselves, and it's hard to not see imperfections in their work. And in anything that you do, and even your finest work, you're going to see little imperfections that you might not be happy with. Even when you've done your best work, you're going to see little things that are going to bother you. But
everybody's a critic. Oh, God.
But
Sorry, Roxy just.
But like Valarie said, you know, if you're working and you're just not seeing improvement in what you're doing anymore, then it is time to call that piece done, or at least
put it to the side.
Put it to the side for a little while and work on something else.
Yep. Shift your brain.
But you will go back to, you know, but you will look back over the years and see earlier works that you've done, and you will see improvement, because your older work, you're going to see more and more mistakes that you've made and things that you could have done better, and
But then they're not mistakes because you're using them to learn.
Yeah. But I think, like a lot of artists, I think that you do have a tendency to look at your older work and be like, oh my God, I can't show this anywhere.
I got a couple pieces like that.
Yeah, I do too. I got a lot of pieces like that. But I think that those are important. And we even talked about this recently here on...
It may have been in members.
Yeah. But one of the things that I do, and I think you do as well, but I can't think of a piece.
I'll tell you.
One of the things I do is I have a couple pieces that, like compositions that I like to do, and I'll go back and repeat that composition every few years or so, and see how I've improved or how I've developed as an artist, just to see how my techniques have changed and how, you know, where I've traveled as an artist, basically. And I think, in general, like, I always see improvement. And as I go back further and look at the older pieces, I can see, like, yeah, like, it's definitely there's definitely a lot of progression there, you know. But I think that that's important, because then it allows you not just to see generally, like over the years, like, oh, generally my work's improving. If you have that, if you have a piece like that you use, then you can say, oh yeah, specifically, this is what I'm doing better now, as compared to where I was, you know, X amount of years ago.
I would say I've redone a piece, and that was right now what I'm trying to do before let me do the technical part right here first. Before I've got this white line, this band from this wall, but then I've noticed this band right here, and I'm trying to break it up so that this stands out more.
Why are you trying to break up the band?
Because
I'll call you Yoko.
it will work better. So I'm going to add some darks right here.
That's what Yoko said.
I'm just going to make some dark rocks. Try to darken this up a little bit here too, so that this wall stands out more. It's okay to have this band, but it looked like it was just continuing, and I didn't want it to continue. So I can darken up a few areas here or there, just little ones, just slightly darker, and kind of break it up. And I can add a little bit more dark in here, just because we got dark in here, but I kind of went lighter. So that's something. But to your question, Dave, are you critiquing your piece or are you critiquing yourself? And you don't realize that's what you're doing.
Because there is a difference.
There is a big difference. Are you saying to yourself all the stuff you're doing wrong or it's not right, and how are you using the negative thoughts in your head to critique your piece? Or are you looking at it not as a perfectionist, just, alright, I like what I did here. I think that'll work better over here because I'm finding this being a little off, so why don't we, you know what I mean, versus it's all crap, I'm crap.
So
type stuff.
I can relate to that. So if I'm doing a portrait or something, you know, and I look at it and I'm like, oh man, this doesn't look anything like the, you know, this doesn't look anything like the subject. I suck, you know. I'm not ever going to be able to fix this. It's way off, you know. That's when you're putting yourself in a negative mindset like that, then it's setting yourself up for failure. You're not going to be able to fix that piece at that point because you're in a negative state, and so you're just not going to be able to fix it. If you look at the piece objectively as a critic, though, if you can do that, and it's an important skill to learn as an artist. If you can look at it and say, all right, well, I'm looking at this portrait and the eye is the wrong shape, or it is, you know, it's a millimeter too high over here, and it's thrown off the whole, you know, it's thrown off the whole shape, or oh my god, the shape of the face is wrong, this line needs to move, you know, this shadow is placed wrong. If you can look objectively, almost like a supervisor would, and say, you know, all right, look, these are the things that have to change to fix this project, and then you see the change that has to be made. Is it thunder?
That was thunder.
And then you make the adjustments, and then you see what corrective action has to be. Like, all right, well, can't do this in pyrography, but in painting, you know, it can be like, all right, well, I need to paint over this and redo this and need to move this over, you know. Pyrography, it's not so simple, which is why it's very important to
use your phone, or your PC or your tablet to make adjustments that, you know, you're curious about, and then you can use that as a reference to move forward with your piece.
Yeah.
And then you're more likely to do it because now you've seen it done, and you'll feel better about making those changes.
But it's also why, for I think a lot of artists who are transitioning into pyrography, it can be hard because a lot of artists, especially painters, you know, you work in forms and you lay the forms in, and then you sort of dial in the details, and you can fix things as you go. Whereas pyrography,
we have to have a prior plan. It's okay, baby.
You got to have a plan, and you got to have a framework for what you do.
Can you open the curtain?
And it needs to be accurate. Look at that.
Well, I can't. Oh, it's raining. Yay!
It's snowing.
It's snowing? Is that thunder snow?
Yep, it is. So,
in fact, let me show you.
So it's important that, you know, if you're going to be a pyrographer, that you do have to, like, make sure that your plan is solid before you, I guess, ever pick up your burning pen.
Yep.
Dave says, no, I look at my artwork and I see some things are off when everyone else says that it's good. Well,
if you see it as being off, then I would make the changes that you think will work.
Yeah. But are you saying you see something's off and you can't put your finger on it?
Sorry, I'm going to take a photo.
Or are you saying that, you know what's off and everyone else says it's good? Because there's an important distinction there, too. But this also goes back to what Wanda was saying about family being supportive and friends being supportive, you know. And I don't know, might be clients, because, you know, I don't know your situation, Dave. So
put my phone back in my so I don't drop it. All right, so I just took a photo, and we can see the color is slightly off because that happens. So now I'm in my edit, and I'm like, it doesn't feel right. Why? So I'm gonna go to contrast, kind of move things around, see what I like. I do see I need to knock down temperature a little bit just so I can see it better.
And
I'm just going to look in one area so that I can focus. Let's see here. Let's go up our shadows.
Wanda says that's what I experience.
Bump our highlights down. I think I got too much contrast. Do that. Bump this down. And I'll just sit and play with it. To see what I like. So like over here, I like that it went darker up there. And I can see here I need to go darker. We did that last week. It is what it is. But I'll just sit and play with it, looking at different areas. See, this is darker still, and I like that. I was focusing on the wall over here. Let's see here. That's the highlights. And I will just sit and make changes. And I'm doing this really quick. I'd take more time and I'd probably use my tablet. But by looking at my phone, I can see this piece differently.
It allows you to see it more objectively.
Yep.
And I want to address what Dave is saying right now. Dave says, as far as the looking at his work, sees something off, he says he can't put his finger on it. And I want
Flip it upside down.
Yep, that's what I was just going to say. There's a couple of low-tech solutions that you can do, and a brief. I'll be brief.
I'm going to pull the camera back so we can see it differently.
Okay. So your brain is really good at adjusting into what you see, and so it'll like autocorrect, and so until you won't be able to see something specifically that's wrong because it's adaptable. And so what you do is you present it situations that it has trouble adapting to. So like what Valarie said is if you're doing something from reference, you flip your reference and the piece that you're doing, you flip them both upside down, and your brain, because it's upside down, doesn't like that because it's not normal. It doesn't want to deal with it, and it switches. Your processing switches to your actually from your rational side to your more creative side, and because your rational side just doesn't want to deal with that nonsense, and it will allow you to see it more accurately. Same thing with a mirror. Like you don't have. If I would say the mirror is actually easier if you've got like a hand mirror. You can actually put your back to the piece and use a hand mirror and look at your piece and your reference in the mirror, and it will accomplish the same thing. You might be able to see what's wrong with it. You'll be able to pick out more accurately, like almost immediately sometimes, like, oh, this is what's wrong, this is out of place. But it helps you, because we do adapt to what we're seeing, and it makes it harder and harder to see things, and that's why it's important to take breaks when you're doing art, and even to step away from the final piece when you're deciding whether something's done or not. But if you're trying to find whether something is off or not, either flipping it upside down or looking at it in reverse can do the same thing. It allows you to look at it more objectively. So I would try that.
Also, as he's been talking, if you notice, I've been moving my board. So we've had it upright, working upright and what have you. And this all looks lighter, doesn't it? As soon as I flipped it, changing how the light hits the wood, look how much darker that got.
Right, and it's not just the light hitting the wood. Like when you look at it upside down, doesn't it look different too? Because your brain is like, I don't want to deal with that. Like it's upside down. This is nonsense. And that's your rational side of the brain leaving the room and being. It's like, all right, I'm out of here. I'm gonna go do math somewhere. And then the creative side of your brain is like, ooh, it's great. Let's look at this.
Yeah. See, it is. Also, the time of day you take a picture. I could take the exact same picture you guys saw me take and take it again at like about 6 o'clock in my studio. With my curtains, what I tend to do is after the live, I'll take a picture of this with my curtains open so that I have the daylight version that I'm taking a picture of, and then I will turn around and take a picture having moved nothing and standing as close to the same place camera angle as I can from the earlier, but taking the picture at say 6:30, and because now it's darker outside, well, it was, but the piece will look different too.
And then I want to add to this too. If you have different pairs of reading glasses like I do, because I work at different distances, and so I use different just regular cheap reading glasses, but I have different levels of them, and sometimes those can make a difference. And if you are looking at different angles through reading glasses, it can distort an image. If you're taking pictures of your work through a phone, it's really important to get a even picture of it and not get a distorted angle, because it will distort the image and you won't be able to look at it correctly. So getting that accurate image of something is super important, because if you change up your optics on whatever you're looking through, it can also affect things. So
see, look how it looks. It looks different from what you guys are seeing here.
Yeah.
So just looking at it smaller, but a really good thing, and that's why I turn the light off, is right now, to see what needs to go darker, take a second and squint your eyes looking at the screen. I know, she's always giving a cute face. Squint your eyes and look at the piece as a whole. What stands out and what doesn't stand out. Whatever doesn't stand out that you want to stand out needs to have more contrast. Like, I'm squinting. In fact, it'd probably work if your eyes are a little blurry and you wear glasses. Take your glasses off and look at it that way. In fact, I will try it. No, I'm too close, so it's not as bad. So squint your eyes, and I see these two areas still really stand out. So in order, I need to do some more darkening here, and I'm still squinting. I definitely still need more darks here. I need to go darker here and up my line, up my ridge. I feel I'm done here. I feel I can go darker, have the band be a little darker. And now what I'm doing is I'm not looking at the reference. This is artistic choices I'm making for the piece, looking around. I feel I can have some more contrast down here in the bottom. Ooh, let me open my eyes for a second and kind of readjust my eyes because they're blurry.
That's because we've almost been going an hour now.
I know. And the light bounces.
That's why Morgan was looking at you. She's like, Mom.
Let's see here. I'm liking how dark this is. So that's another thing on critiquing your own piece and being kind to yourself. Pick out things you do like. I do like how this is looking, especially squinted. So I'm going to take this tone and I think I'm going to move it down this wall, because I think it'll just give it some more dynamic feel to it. Yeah, I do feel I need a little more definition down here, because this is, this area right here is the main view of the camera, and then this is also a focal point. You can have multiple focal points, you just have to get the perspective and the different layers of perspective right for it to work. Let's see here, do I have a place for my eyes to rest? I don't know that I'm going to darken too much overall on the back cliffs. It's okay if being less defined, but I do feel I need to darken this right here so I get the separation from the back. Maybe a little darker along here. Remember, I am going to have some white up in the clouds, and that's really going to pop it out, and I'll have some white down in the water to balance that, so I'm not just white up here and then there's no white down here. There needs to be some white in the water where it's the lightest. Plus you would have reflection of the clouds in the water. So I need to make sure to add some white in there. Let's see here, what else? Yeah, this needs to go darker. I'm getting happier with this side here. I'm happy with the definition of my rocks down here, but in order to pop some of the tops of the rocks, I do need to darken a little bit, whether it's the grass or the gravel behind the rocks, to really define them. Let's see here. What else am I happy with? I think I could use some more shading here in order for that to work. But I definitely need to go darker here. I see it from squinting. Do you guys see it different squinting? And I do need to darken this while keeping this about where it's at, because this is where there's an actual indent and the sun is coming down and hitting this rock like this. So this rock probably should be close in tonal value to this rock. What I can do real quick while we're here is I can again change your brain. If I can read my screen because it's so little, I know where it's at. There it is.
Sorry.
There, I pulled all the color. I mean, there's a tad of color, but I pulled all the color. And do we see how tonally the contrast of it changed just by doing that? And look how much it blends in together. Whew! I got a lot more darkening than I realized.
See, and that's like super important. That's a super important observation to make, because like where you thought, you know,
yeah, where I thought was good to go, because now I'm losing the top of this, which I already said I needed to go darker for this band. I'm losing it in the clouds. I'm fine with this. I'm pretty good with that. But I need to have some darks coming away from my center point to make my center point stand out more. In fact, we can see a light line come around here that I feel I need to break up right here. Break that line up.
Yeah.
Look at that. Look, just by me desaturating this completely, how much the piece changed. And even without squinting, we now see what stands out and what blends together, and I lose. Like, I lose the top of the mountain here. With that, I am going to brush some white to shift this so this will stand out better, which I'll have to do here too in order for it to read right. Let's flip it upside down, because we've already seen that it looks different upside down. See there, tonal wise that looks fine. Look how light that looks with no color at all. And I do need to darken up here. Let's do that. Overall, I'm happy with the shape of the clouds. I don't think I'm going to alter those too much.
I mean, the clouds look awesome.
Yeah, I think I'm going to leave the cloud shapes alone. They feel okay to me. They feel right.
It does need some darkening, though.
It does need darkening. Ugh.
Because that right side, I mean, it's upside down. So
this side.
Left side. Of your reference. You see how dark that side is in comparison to the other, because it's in shadow.
So. Yep. And I can also put a little bit more darks here to separate the layer, especially looking at the reference.
Yeah. I think that when you put the darks in, it's going to, I mean, the river already stands out.
Yeah.
But I think it'll actually help the river stand out
even more. I'm trying to angle this more so that. Wow. See, just desaturating the video, we can see.
But this is the stuff that you need to do as an artist, though, to like, because especially if you're gonna, I mean, sorry.
No, I thought I was getting closer than I actually was.
I know.
So now you're seeing in real time.
But it's important to do this because this is what separates, like, you know, work from being, you know, half done, or not half done, but like 80% done to 100% done. So instead of leaving the race early,
yep,
you can finish it, and then it will take it from being a really, really good piece to a masterpiece.
How many of you guys would have, let me read just back to where we were. I think I've made a point.
I mean, and we're going to see it because the color and the warmth of the wood does trick your brain.
Yep. And
it does give you, but the thing is, right, it's just like colors in a painting. Like, it's nice to have. But it's not the whole picture. And it's not the essential part that your brain, that is, you need that contrast.
So just doing those couple of tricks allowed our brains to see it.
Yep.
Slightly different, and now I know. How many of you guys would have gotten this far in the piece and said it was done?
See, and when I walked into her studio last week, I thought it was done. Just objectively, right? I was like, oh, wow, you're finished. You know, it looks done.
And I went, nope.
But seeing that, you know,
it's not done.
It's not objectively, not because you told me.
No,
but,
no.
I can see that. Andrea says, I can see and understand how to evaluate my work to improve my own work.
Oh, good. I'm so glad.
But I mean, this is the stuff that you got to do. But in doing this, it makes all of your art better. Because if you apply this across all of your processes, not just in pyrography, in everything, it'll make all of your work better. Wanda says she would have.
Call it done, yeah.
Andrea says me.
But now seeing it desaturated and the shifting of the camera, does it look different?
Burl. Of course, Burl. Nope.
No, you know what? I created Burl. That comment right there, I created Burl. This is just payback of years and years. Burl's just paying.
It needs to be darker.
Yes.
Actually, I remember her saying it needs to be darker.
Yes.
So
yes.
I got your back, Burl.
No. I created Burl.
I wasn't on my phone.
In that way. In that way. You get me back for the key. I know what she's doing. But she's not wrong.
Yeah.
She is not wrong. So if you have somebody who says, oh no, it looks wonderful, you know what? Flip it upside down and have them squint and say, what do you think now? And see if they see what you know feels a little off.
Pearl says this dates back to a piece she did years ago and Val telling her that it needs to be darker. Yep.
That's from back in, what, 2018? Yep, see the key. I know exactly what she's discussing because I drove her nuts.
But you know, with your family and friends, the people that are supportive, if they aren't that critical, they are still a benchmark for you.
They are,
because if
cut them slack.
If they're not seeing anything, then at least you've passed that benchmark. So. You know, that's something.
Because most people aren't going to see it. You know, most people aren't going to see what you're seeing.
But, again, you know, it's, I guess if you could find some artists that, you know, that can be more critical. Constructively critical.
Or tell your loved one, I know you love me, and you're extremely supportive. You will not get in trouble. point some stuff out to me that you like and you don't like.
You might have to train them.
You just tell, I know, but get the conversation started in that way so that they don't have to worry about, is wifey or hubby going to get, upset with me? Am I going to get, attitude for the rest of the day because I pointed something out? Just say, look, this is safe. I'm trying to improve. And because you love and support me so much, I value your opinion. Tell me 2 things you like or feel off and 2 things you love. And see if they start looking at it the way you kind of feel you need them to look at it more critically. And then they'll start pointing it out. But have a safe word.
So here's a possible that might be able to help. And this is something that we did in the military. But it can be applied to civilian practice, and it's useful and helpful. Is that when you get done with something like this, or if you're working on something, what we found is that you ask for not 3 ups and 3 downs, but you ask for 3 things that were good and 3 things that could be done better. And in art, you could ask, like, hey, what are 3 things that you like about this piece? Mm-hmm. And what are 3 things that you think that I could do better? Or,
what if you were doing the piece, what are 3 things you would do differently?
Yeah.
That way it doesn't feel like, they don't feel like they're attacking you.
Yeah.
Just, it allows them to put themselves in your shoes and,
yeah.
Okay, if I was doing this piece, maybe I would try it this way and this way and this way. And this way they don't feel they're attacking you.
It feels collaborative.
Yeah, and you don't feel the need to get subconsciously defensive.
Right.
Because they're not pointing out a flaw in you, and they're viewing it from a different, from their perspective, versus trying to.
Yeah, because for most people, if you ask them to tell you something bad, they will shy away from it because nobody wants to.
They don't want to hurt your feelings.
They don't want to hurt feelings. But if you ask, like, hey, what would you like to see more of? Then people will often give you more. They're more eager to give you feedback on that.
And be prepared for that, and don't get upset when they do it because you asked for it.
Wanda says that is the way that she had to ask Hubby.
Yep.
Dave says the upside down trick works good.
Oh, good.
I'm glad to hear that.
Good.
Dave.
Yeah, there's a couple of different ways. It's just all of our brains view things in a certain way. So finding what works for your brain.
It's kind of like when you stare at a pattern, or if you ever lost something in plain sight.
This whole piece is lost in plain sight.
But what I'm talking about is like a coffee cup or a set of keys or something like that.
Your glasses.
My
pencil.
glasses.
A pencil.
Right. It's something that you lost because it hasn't moved in so long, and you're so used to seeing it there that you just don't see it anymore. And it's sort of the same concept is in art, is that your brain kind of locks in everything and it just stops seeing stuff because it just adjusts to it.
It sees it as a whole instead of smaller parts.
Yeah. Wanda says her hubby has to improve so much in critiquing.
Well, and it is a process because they need to learn how to communicate with you where they feel comfortable in telling you, comfortable in seeing something in a different way,
mm-hmm.
and then comfortable in being honest but supportive and loving. And once you learn to talk this way with each other in regards to something like this, other things might actually get easier to discuss in a healthier way. It's just an overall good way to learn to talk to your significant other, or your friends, or your kids, or whoever's in your life.
And just also keep in mind that, like, because it's art and because you know it, it doesn't mean that it's easy for other people.
Yeah.
Like, it might be the same thing as, like, if you have somebody who's mechanically inclined, if they're like, if somebody were to call you out to the garage and be like, hey, what sounds wrong with this engine, and you might not be able to tell. I wouldn't. That's not what I do. Like, I don't know.
But there's some people that
It
can
sounds
hear
like an engine.
one little knock and know exactly
Yeah.
where it came from and what's causing it, or things that could cause it, and can.
So you might have to like help them along with like the mechanics of it. Like, hey, like I think that there's something out of alignment here. There's something here in this particular area of this piece that doesn't look right with me, and I'm trying to figure out why. Something that the contrast is off, or something might be too dark or too light. I don't know. And you might have to lead them to it, but or train them to specifically sort of look for what it is that you're trying to find, like, you know what I mean? It's like looking for a puzzle piece. Like, hey, what are you looking for? It's like, well, I'm looking for an edge piece that's got yellow and blue on it.
Look for Waldo.
Yeah. Wanda says he's always done that with my music, but he's now doing that with my burning.
Good. And he'll learn. He'll learn, And if... What did...
Dave said he has dyslexia, and sometimes it makes it harder. I hear you, Dave. I don't have diagnosed dyslexia, but it runs in my family, and so I completely feel you. Sometimes I get lost in my work. Like I get... Sometimes when I'm working, like I like get lost in the lines. I'm like, what is this now? Dave says he was a mechanic for 40 years. So yeah. But I think that
But that's experience that you learned,
right.
And you built up and practiced.
Yeah.
So when you're asking somebody who isn't an artist for their input, they don't have experience in that.
Yeah.
Or they've had negative experience from whatever, and so they're afraid they're going to hurt you. But as long as you both agree it's safe for us to discuss this in this way, and I won't take it personal, and I really do want to hear what you think, because I think you can help me make this, take it to the next level, then they're more likely to open up, and it'll be more than just, I think you did awesome, and then move on, because they're kind of, you need the extra eyes if they're available. If not, like the members send me pictures all the time.
We have not done a critique in a long time.
I haven't done a critique in a long time. Maybe I should.
Maybe that's something that...
We'll do that next month. We will do a critique,
Okay.
a public critique next month. Because the members, which you can become a member, shameless plug, which I am horrible at, next to the subscribe button, I get the members send me pictures of what they're working on all the time. And as long as I have the reference, one of the first, when you first start doing that as a member, sending me your stuff and asking for input, I kind of fish around for, are you wanting an actual critique versus support? Because I might say something a little, or be less critical if it's just support.
Yeah,
I'm trying to figure out how to word this, because
you could say, I want hubcap critique or Valarie critique. And then if it's hubcap critique, I'll
but
just
if you
look
want
at
a Valarie critique,
oh look, it's awesome!
but if you want a Valarie
What an amazing job! 2 thumbs up.
Be prepared, because I will be honest with you, and I will absolutely support you.
Wanda, I don't know if I said this, but Wanda needs to go.
Oh, are we already?
Yeah,
oh,
we're
we
like
are.
17 minutes past though.
Well, I wanted to make sure that we could
She says
help.
it's been educational.
Well, thank you for joining us. And it is lunchtime, isn't it? I wanted to make sure that we could clarify as much information for Dave's questions
Yep.
as we could. Because a lot of this stuff, we've discussed with the members. But I'm glad, like, Andrea got even more information.
Yeah.
Because, remember, somebody, just like in viewing something, somebody could tell you something, but then down the road tell you the same thing, but it hits differently, you hear it different, they say it different, Just be kind to yourself. I feel this needs to go darker, and I think I want a little bit more cracks in it, so that it reads like this is.
I just heard that you think you need a little bit more crack.
I do feel I need more darks because of how dark I am here and dark in here. I need to pull up some more darks. So next week is a members only live. I'm going to try to do...
Next week it's a Tuesday.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Okay. Went over my head.
Sorry.
I don't know what you're...
Dave says thanks for all the help.
Well, I hope that it really did help, and if I need to explain it differently, by all means let me know, and I will definitely try. So I'm gonna try to lay out a tentative schedule of doing 2 publics a month and 2 members only a month. But one of the publics may fluctuate because I'm still dealing with medical issues. So, yeah, I gotta figure that out. So next week, though, is gonna be a members only live.
Okay.
So, if you're watching on replay, don't forget to hit subscribe if you're new. Hit the like button, please. I don't know. And leave a comment on replay. Let me know if it helped, it didn't help, information you're looking for. We'll go from there. Alrighty, sit with me. You're awesome. You can do this. Why? Because you're a pyro artist. Happy burning, guys.
Bye.
Bye. The doggies know. They're like, we're done.